Okay, podcast recording May 5th, Cynthia LaRue and Hany Bam, celebrating Small Business Week 2021. Okay. All right, good morning. How are you?
Great, Cynthia. It's great to be here.
Great to have you here. Please introduce yourself to our guests.
So, Hany is my name. I'm the founder and CEO of Markaaz. We're on a mission to connect every small business on the planet and give them access to the best verification, monitoring, and payment solutions out there.
That's awesome. And for those of you that don't know me, I'm Cynthia LaRue. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer of Markaaz, and I'm super excited to kick off our podcast today with Hany. So Hany, we're here today to celebrate National Small Business Week. Why is this week so important to you personally? You know, you're a small business owner yourself, and why is it important to the Markaaz team?
So we started this journey with Markaaz with a very clear mission to really change the landscape for small businesses globally. We've done this before in a larger part of the market with suppliers and buyers in the international trade arena. But we felt passionately, long before COVID ever hit, we felt passionate that this backbone of society, this backbone of the world economy, small businesses, the largest employer on the planet, were really left on their own, to their own devices, to really get through so many things that they face day in, day out. And so when we started Markaaz, it was with the simple and unwavering objective to help small businesses as a combined community get access to things they haven't had access to before, get recognized for who they are as a group with all that comes with that, and last but not least, help them overcome some of the biggest challenges that they face in business, pre-COVID and post-COVID. Now, some of those have stayed the same, some have changed over time, and we've kept up with those changes.
Yeah, I love that sense of community that Markaaz is really focused on, that brand purpose to build that sense of community across all small businesses around the world. I mean, it's an amazing purpose.
Yeah. And it really, Cynthia, it really speaks to both knowledge sharing, access, and equality.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All those things that those small business owners need. Absolutely. All righty. So, you're an entrepreneur now. You've started Markaaz. So what does it mean to you to be an entrepreneur?
Gosh, that's something I've thought a lot about for so many years. I think entrepreneurship and courage are two words that are synonymous. I think we all have an entrepreneurial gene inside us. It takes some of us longer to activate that gene, to find the courage to go with it. We are entrepreneurial in our lives at home. We're entrepreneurial whether we work for a big company. We're entrepreneurial when we connect with people. It's the same as negotiation. People used to always say to me, negotiation is reserved for the big boardroom in a company. It's not. We negotiate every day. We negotiate with our partners. We negotiate with our kids. We negotiate with people we work with. We do it all the time. So entrepreneurship for me is one of those things that is a dormant gene in all of us. And sometimes it takes a life event to activate it. But for me, what I'm really passionate about is helping others find that gene as early as possible in their life. I tell people, for me, I wished I had the courage to formally activate that gene. It's always been active in me. And I've done a lot of very entrepreneurial things, but I wished I'd had the courage to formally activate that in me and do what we're doing here at Markaaz 20 years ago.
Yeah, that's exciting. So what was it that activated that dormant gene for you most recently? Because you've like you said, it's always been there. But what was that one thing that made it go, okay, I'm coming out?
It was a number of things, actually. It was, I had done a lot of very successful things in my life. In big corp, I had created some very big businesses. And I always felt like they got to a point where you lost control of them, and you couldn't see the vision fully through. There were process and operational people that took over the vision and did something else with it other than what you intended. And I'm not a control freak at all, but entrepreneurial vision is something you have to be committed to, and you have to be prepared to follow through all the way. And finding like-minded people to do that with was very exciting for me. And it was really the tipping point in my life where I thought, yeah, it's time to do this right. It's time to do it the right way. It's time to fulfill that real passion in my life, and help others do the same. So it wasn't a selfish endeavor. It was a very altruistic and social endeavor, with, of course, that adage that we talk about, and that is doing well as a business by doing good.
Yeah, I love that. And here we are celebrating National
Right.
Small Business Week. And what an inspirational story to hear how you really started this business. It's incredible,
Yeah.
really.
Yeah.
All righty. So you talked about the size of small businesses in the U.S. 99.9% of all businesses in the U.S. are small businesses. And they really are the backbone of the U.S. economy. And what do you see as the biggest challenges facing small business owners today?
So I think challenges fall into two buckets. The challenges that small businesses know and feel, like reopening their business, like how do they get access to cash flow, like how do they stay connected with their customers, like what's going on with their suppliers. But there are other challenges that perhaps small businesses aren't thinking about, or we've historically used words that put people off. Things like cyber risk for small business. Our co-founder is very big on educating small businesses on the importance of cybersecurity. Very few small businesses know that they are the number one target for cyber hackers. Very few know that small businesses lose money to cyber attacks than any other business because they don't have the tools, or they're not well protected, or they don't understand their points of vulnerability. So I think there are a number of challenges. The three I mentioned, the big ones: cash flow, customers, and suppliers. And then there are those that are really important to that, like the health of their employees, cyber risks, and a number of other things. And we see it as part of our mission to both educate, open up the dialogue between businesses, share experience, and provide unique tools and assets to help businesses with the known challenges and those perhaps that they don't know about.
Yeah, I love that. That centering on the education component. I'm a small business owner. Maybe I have 5 employees, and I'm running 100 miles an hour, working probably 100 hours a week, and I may not even realize that my business is so open to a cyber attack.
Right.
And it's really important, and that's what I love about working for Markaaz. We're making sure small business owners have access to that education and also the tools to help them problem solve for cyber attacks and multiple other things also.
Yeah.
But cyber attacks are just rampant, and it's so easy to think it happens to the big boys, right?
Yeah,
It happens to
exactly.
Target, it happens to eBay, it happens to Exxon. It's not going to happen to me and my beauty shop, right? So it's a great point. It's a really good point.
Yeah. And I think the other thing, Cynthia, candidly, when we spoke to small businesses, and we did a lot of this before we started Markaaz, all over the world actually, they told us two really big things. Number one is they're drowning in what we call point-to-point solutions, or individual products and services. So if you look at the computer or screen or the phone of a small business, you'll see on average 25 to 30 little tabs open across the top. And guess what? None of them talk to each other. On average, small businesses tell us they're using less than 10% of the feature functionality of all these applications, and it costs them about 15% of their running costs. That's really high, and it's a big challenge, and that's just getting worse and worse. The second thing they tell us is that they're having a hell of a time, and it's worse now, by the way, mid-COVID and coming out of COVID, verifying themselves, credentialing themselves, and doing that over and over and over again. On average, small businesses spend about 17 days a year, 15 to 17 days a year, verifying themselves for anything that they literally want to do. And ultimately, it gets down to a blunt instrument like the credit score of the business owner, which is just not any longer an appropriate reflection of the health of a business. And again, those two things were a big part of what we wanted to solve for small business. If you think about the structural inefficiency of that, particularly the verification, if you multiply that out by the 300 million odd small businesses around the world, that's about $1.7 trillion a year that small businesses waste just verifying who they are. That's an outrageous number. And that's something that we're committed to doing something about.
It really is. You think about the number, the trillions of dollars that are being wasted and the time being wasted. I mean, this time is so precious to a business owner.
Yeah.
There's never enough hours in the day.
Yeah.
And so for us to have a mission and to also be weaving this into, National Small Business Week to save them time and money, I mean, that's an amazing purpose. It really is outstanding. So you talked about COVID a little bit earlier also, but we all know that small businesses have really been hit hard by the pandemic. How have you seen them show resiliency and flexibility over this last year? Because you've really had to have that to survive.
Yeah, I think those two words go hand in hand, Cynthia. Resilience, flexibility, and add a little of what we said earlier about entrepreneurship or courage. That's the secret formula there. So a few things. First of all, the rate of change or adaptation for small businesses has been second to none in terms of the accelerated rate at which they've adopted digital strategies. I think that's really important. The second thing is they've laser focused on those areas that we mentioned earlier of cash flow customers and suppliers, as well, of course, as their own people and how their own people are doing and how they support their people the best way they can through the pandemic. Very practically, if we think about those three things from a cash flow point of view, we've seen small businesses pull together all the resources that they have, personal, professional, people figuring out and wanting to figure out how to use their air miles to pay their bills, how they pull together all their sources of cash, how they negotiate with their suppliers, and so on and so on. If you think about suppliers, that one's a little more tricky. We've seen people stay connected with their suppliers to renegotiate terms. But what we haven't seen is people thinking in a very lucid way about, are their suppliers still in business? Are they going to be able to support them coming out of COVID, etc.? We're going to help them with that. And how they monitor that on an ongoing basis. I think that's a fundamental shift that's happening, and we're very committed to supporting that. And then last but not least, their customers. How they engage with their customers in new and different ways, because the world is different coming out of COVID. It's not like it's going to spring back to the way it was. That's anyone who's thinking that way isn't thinking the right way about their business today. But through all of that, we've seen the highest number of new business registrations amid COVID in history, which is extraordinary.
It is. I love that metric. I'm like, wow, look at the grit of and the tenacity of really the human race, right? It's just outstanding. Yeah,
exactly. And new and different ways to do things and to think about things. Now, some of that has been fueled by, the rampant unemployment that's happened. But when you consider that 90% of employment happens in small business, that's why the federal government is focusing there. That's why we are focusing there. And that's why small businesses who think about the opportunities to create new and different things, more local, more hyper-local services and solutions, more innovative solutions that allow people to think about how they work, where they work from, what they do, how they go about things. There are tremendous opportunities there. So I think that creativity and that resilience is being paid back in spades to those who get into that space and who are able to unlock those opportunities.
Yeah, the opportunities are there. You're right. It's the unlocking of them that's so important for these business owners to get that key. And I know that's part of our mission at Markaaz, if you will, to give them that key to unlock those opportunities. And that creativity, that really is important too. You really have to be creative. Everyone is tired of hearing it, but the new normal, right? We hear it everywhere. We've been hearing it for months and months. And it's a little bit exhausting to keep reading about it, but it's true. And we are in a new normal. And I completely agree agree with you that we're not going to go backwards. I don't
No.
believe we're going to go backwards to where we were,
Yeah.
January of last year.
No, we won't.
It is a new normal and it's here to stay. So that creativity is critical.
Yeah,
It's a very good
absolutely.
point. Very good point. So, really, the needs of small businesses haven't changed at the core. You talked about customers, you talked about cash flow, you talked about suppliers, right? But those things have really become more acute during COVID. You already talked about that a little bit, right? But what exactly can organizations do today to really bounce back? I mean, what are some quick steps, some quick tips you can give? You need to do 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, 1, 2, 3. Let's go. Lightning round. So, number one, verify if your suppliers are still in business and if they're likely to continue to be in business for you as you come out of COVID. Number one. Number two, monitor your suppliers and do that efficiently and effectively to make sure that you're getting what you need when you need it. And number three, think very differently about your cash flow. Think about solutions that help you manage your cash flow in a very different way. There was a lot of inertia, there was a lot of inefficiency in those things before COVID. Small businesses can't afford the inertia and laziness about those things any longer.
Yeah, you're right. They have to be on that every day. You have to really stay on top of that cash flow. And truly, so many small businesses, they go out of business because that is a big challenge for them each and every day. And but I do like the fact that we always come back to that golden triangle, as we say within the Markaaz team, of cash flow, customers, suppliers. I mean, it really is the critical points that small business owners need to focus on. And we're here to give them those tools to improve those three things.
Absolutely.
So how do you see small businesses shifting the way they spend in the face of the pandemic moving forward? We talked about their trillions of dollars they're wasting, but how do you see them really shifting their spend moving forward?
So I think a couple of things. So we're partnering with some very big partners to bring some of these tools to small businesses in ways that they've never had access to before, because either they've been too expensive, they've been technically complex, or they just haven't known about them. And so we have some big partners who are committed with us to bringing those resources to small business in ways that are easy to use and very impactful in their business. I think, first of all, in terms of how small businesses negotiate access, where you can verify yourself and where you can verify your ability to pay for things, negotiate better with your suppliers, number one. Number two, make sure you move away from thinking about suppliers to supply networks. So have more than one supplier for different things. Think about that level of diversification. And then when you think about your customers, think about how you communicate with them on a regular basis in ways that are relevant to how they're living their life now, not the way it was before. Do not remind them with nostalgia the way it used to be, but keep up with them and how they've adapted, because like you, they've also adapted how they think about things. And then last but not least, when you think about your cash flow, and when you think about how you spend your cash flow, be very prudent about that. Be very prudent thinking about the things that really matter, the things that really are focused on customers, that are focused on suppliers, and that are focused on helping your business in this new digital age be the most effective and stand out the most compared to others for what you do. And we see many examples of that. We see really good examples of that. Everything from, people that make coffee through to people that deliver, through all sorts of things. But think about what's going to make you stand out from the crowd and spend your money there, and always be testing how well is what you're doing working. Is it effective or not? And if it's not, stop doing it. Do something else.
Exactly. Yeah, that differentiation is so important to stand out. I really like that. And I really like that comment you made just a minute ago about leveraging your business health, right? Leveraging the health of your business, and that you are a quality customer when you're in that supplier network, right? Using that as leverage in your negotiations. You have to negotiate. I mean, you have to negotiate everything in today's times to be able to survive and to impact your cash flow. Really important, really important. Very great. So you talked a little bit about digital, so I'm glad that you brought brought that up. So really, how important is digital transformation for small business owners as they prepare for the future? Everyone says digital transformation. It kind of, it's like beating a dead horse, but it's true, right? And sometimes small business owners, they haven't jumped onto that bandwagon yet. So talk about that a little bit.
So I think digital, we always say the old adage, digital for digital's sake. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about effective ways to extend your reach, effective ways to communicate to your customers. And I'll give you a silly example. Today, when you go into a restaurant and they have those wonderful little QR codes on the table that allow you to pull up a menu, select from it, order, and pay there and then. That's really smart. That's a good example of a digital transformation that was easy to do, effective, and efficient. Because, by the way, what that allows you to do is to habituate your customers to say, if they're sitting at home and they like your food and they want to order it, well, guess what? You've already conditioned them into a behavior where they can do that, whether they're sitting in your restaurant or whether they're sitting at home. Much the same with other providers. People in the past thought you had to spend a lot of money being digitally effective. And the truth of the matter is, in the digital world, which is so much more vast than the physical world, that brings challenges and opportunities. In the challenges, there's so much noise. In the opportunities, the reach is so much more. So if people in that big, wide, global digital world don't know who you are, you need to find a way to tell them who you are. And there's a couple of very practical things you can do with that. One is use influencers. People who already have a network of people that they speak to, get them to speak on your behalf, number one. Number two, invite people to come and try your services in a very low friction, low cost, or no cost way. Get them to try and see what the experience is like. Number three, always follow up with your customers. How was the experience? Real-time constant surveys for every single thing you do. If you think about what's changed when we buy goods and services online, for instance, from Amazon, almost every purchase is followed up with a survey. How was the product? Did you like it? Would you recommend it to a friend? Do that. Get in the habit of doing that. And then last but not least, the way you run your business, think about the digital tools that allow you to bring about some efficiency from that 25 to 30 point-to-point solutions we talked about to something more streamlined. Think about what you really need, what really matters, and double down there. And we at Markaaz are very committed to helping you create those things uniquely for each business, by the way. And we'll be at that point very soon where each business will be able to create their own tools, both curating their tools from what's available and creating their own tools, where we'll actually help them create those tools in a very meaningful way. So I think that's where we're going with digital. If digital things allow you to extend your reach with your customers, better monitor your suppliers, improve your cash flow, and run your business with less time and more efficient ways, that's what you should focus on.
You know what I love about everything that you just said? The center of everything was the customer.
Yeah.
You talked about the customer over and over and over again. And small business owners, they need to focus on their customer every single day, every decision they're making. How is this going to impact my customer? And you'll probably make the right decision if you put them at the center of it every single time. And I have to say, I love those darn QR codes. Now that when I go out to eat, I love it. I love having the QR code, scan it, and pull up the menu. It makes life easy. Yeah. And that's a very low cost way, like you said, to go digital. I think a lot of small business owners get overwhelmed by this digital transformation. You need to go spend hundreds of thousands of dollars, and you really don't. It's these small incremental things that you can do to fold into your business digital solutions that drive a stronger customer experience that really make a difference. So that's a great way, the way you broke it down into small sort of bite-sized tips, if you will, of how a small business owner can really can embrace digital. That's awesome. So, really half of, switching gears just a little bit, half of business owners report significant pain with capital funds in sourcing, right? And we know this. What do you think can be done to change this? This is a real big pain point for small business owners. We talked about, how the pandemic has impacted them. We've talked about how important the golden triangle, customers, suppliers, cash flow management is, and we've talked about digital. And now this elephant in the room of they have a really hard time getting capital. What do you think they can do to improve that?
Yeah, this is one of my favorite topics, Cynthia. Big fan. I'm a big fan of this. Before we started Markaaz, my co-founder and I traveled the world, understanding the pain points and challenges of small business, and this cash flow topic came up a lot all over the world. Everything from Hong Kong to Japan to Singapore to here in the United States to Australia to throughout Latin America. And we noticed a couple of very key things. Number one, small businesses had significantly narrower choices in terms of how they pay for things. So we as individual consumers are spoiled today, whether it's paying with PayPal or paying with Zelle or paying, pay with points, etc., etc. We're spoiled for choice, but they're all point-to-point solutions, meaning one source of funding for one transaction. In the small business world, we're creating at Markaaz something completely unique that's never been done before. We're allowing small businesses to pool together all those sources of value that they have had access to as consumers. But because in business, the typical transactions are bigger and they're more frequent, we're allowing them to bring them together, what we call staging, to bring those sources of value together, where we will verify for them the availability of funds, the complete view of all their sources of value, and we will verify that on their behalf to their counterparties. That means they can negotiate better terms, whether it's with their bank or whether it's with a supplier or whether it's with another business that they use for other services. So that's one area that's really important. The second thing that we believe is going to happen, and by the way, that will be available very soon on Markaaz, and that's completely unique and never been done before. We expect that to be a game changer. The second thing that we believe will happen is today, and it's actually got worse during the pandemic, is small businesses are typically paid in 60 to 90 days by big business. And big business have got very good at saying, if you want your money in 7 days, give me a 15 to 20% discount. So small businesses are having to make significant investments to tool up or to create products or to ship products to big corp. And I don't want to name names, but it happens pervasively. And then they're being hit out for a very deep discount. That again brings that significant inefficiency into the cash flow cycle. Where we think things will go is to a model where in a community and a network and a platform like Markaaz, your ability to, one, verify yourself, two, confirm the availability of funds. No one needs to know how you put the pieces together. That's private. We'll keep that private for you. But the fact that funds are available will allow you to access better cash flow tools, better cash flow solutions that don't require you to provide those 15 or 20% discounts to a large corp. In fact, we may even find new players and new sources of funds that will basically provide you that cash instead of for 20% discount, maybe for 1 or 2%. Because you have a history and a pattern on the platform and you're building not just a credit score, but a holistic business score on the platform. And we're really committed to that.
I mean, that is really revolutionary. It really is. I mean, we all know that 15 to 20% discount is very true. It's very real. And to save that much money for, 99.9% of the business in the U.S., that's a lot of money to save companies. It's outstanding. It's very exciting. Very exciting.
Agreed.
Yeah.
And candidly, even if you think about traditional lenders like banks and credit unions and others, the reason they have struggled amid COVID to continue to lend or continue to provide cash flow support for businesses. And I'm talking about separate from what the government is doing, of course, which is a whole other topic which we should spend a minute on. The reason they struggle is that historically they've relied on a one and done credit assessment of an individual or a business. Those models have broken down completely during COVID, and they're in desperate need of a new norm in terms of how they monitor the health of businesses. Well, again, that's something we're committed to at Markaaz, and we're going to do that uniquely with the most comprehensive and the most widely available monitoring service that's out there. Period. End of discussion.
Yeah, to your point, that single business credit score, single individual credit score. I mean, that's outdated.
Yeah.
It doesn't work in today's new world. It really doesn't. It's a very good point. Well, you mentioned this government support for businesses, right? So why don't you expand on that a little bit?
So we're seeing two things with that. The government has publicly said they're really struggling with verification of businesses, number one. And number two, we're seeing rampant fraud rates in the space. And it's understandable with people struggling. It brings out, the good in people and the bad in people as well. And so one of the things that, we are working with actually a number of cities around the country in the United States is to help them verify businesses, number one. Number two, to help safely deliver support funds to those businesses. And then number three, monitoring how far that $1 of aid goes here versus over here. So if I give $1 of aid to this type of business, does it go as far as $1 of aid to this type of business? And we believe that'll bring about more and more efficiency in different industries and different businesses. And we believe it'll also help the government figure out how to more quickly accelerate the recovery in the economy and more effectively deliver the dollars that it has in support to the right place to support businesses in the right way.
Yeah, and I mean, really, Markaaz, everything we do is powered by data and analytics, right?
Yeah.
And so, of course, the government needs data and analytics on the investments that they're making, and it's not really a return on investment to them, but in a way it is. In a way it is, right?
Return on the economy.
Return on the economy, yes. Yeah. We'll do ROE instead of ROI.
Exactly.
But it's very true. They need that data to know how effective the money they are providing is back to the economy and ultimately back to the citizens, right? Back to the individual person and providing for themselves and their families. It's really important, really important. Okay. Well, Hany, it's been great having you on the podcast today and talking about National Small Business Week. It's been so much fun. Do you have any closing comments that you want to, before we wrap up, that you want to say to the audience today?
Myself, my co-founder, and the whole team at Markaaz are so deeply committed to what we're doing here. This is not an experiment. We are passionate about small business. We walk in their shoes, and we are really committed to helping them with their cash flow customers and suppliers and helping them get to a new norm that's better than wherever they were before, whether you're a new business starting up or a business that's bouncing back from COVID or a business that had to hit pause for a variety of reasons and are now coming back. We're there for you. We're really committed.
Well, that's awesome. That's a great way to end podcast series number 1 of In the Footsteps of Small Business. Thank you, Hany.
Thanks, Cynthia. Catch you later.